We left off last week with Esau and Jacob being born. And just to give a recap, what we're going to talk about today is the birthright. And there is a difference between the birthright and the father's blessing. The birthright goes to the firstborn son, and the birthright entails the right or the ability to be the head of the family once Papa's gone. In other words, here's my successor. Here's the one who's coming after me. That's the birthright. It also includes a double portion of the inheritance. So if daddy's got money or flocks or herds or whatever, double portion goes to the birthright. And then the rest of it goes to however many kids that are there. So that's the difference between the birthright. That's the birthright. The blessing is what daddy does, and he can do to whichever son he wants to and however way he wants to. But the intention of the blessing was to back up the birthright. The birthright, again, goes to the eldest son, and he's going to be the one that's going to rule the family. In order to rule that family and watch over that family, he's going to need money to support that family, right? And so that's how it was intended to be. We're going to find out that what happens here is the birthright goes to the eldest son being Esau, and just to get ahead of the game, Esau sells his birthright. He looks down his nose at the birthright. He would rather have a hill of beans than he would have his birthright. He doesn't really care about his birthright. And so he's going to sell his birthright. It's a voluntary thing. Jacob's not twisting his arm or breaking his neck, forcing him. He sells his birthright. We need to understand that. The blessing, which we're going to find out in chapter 27, is something altogether different. The blessing is stolen deceitfully by Jacob and his mother. Okay, so just to kind of give you a little heads up here. Genesis 25. 25. And the first came out red all over, like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. And after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold on Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. And Isaac was 80 years old when she bare him. How would you like to be 60 and have your firstborn? And twins at that. I mean, you go along for all those years and you got nothing, and now all of a sudden, I think God has a sense of humor. When he blesses, he blesses. What's that verse? I see exceedingly abundantly beyond all we can ask or think. She got 2. The word Esau, I looked it up, and the word Esau actually means rough or rough handling. It's like you pick up something that's rough to your hands. Esau was rough and he was hairy, okay? And he was red. I mean, I can't fathom this baby coming out with hair all over the place and red and a rough kid. I mean, he was rough in the womb. We read previously last week that there was conflict within the womb. We read last week that Rebecca couldn't figure this out. What is going on? You know, this is her first time to be pregnant, but you know, what's going on with all this turmoil inside me? And she asks of the Lord, and the Lord tells her, there's 2 nations, there's 2 people inside of you, 2 personalities. And by the way, the elder shall serve the younger. That's not man's way. Man's way is the other way around. Man's way is the birthright goes to the firstborn son. Now let's be honest, when twins are born here, one of them's got to come out first. Is that not right? But it's not hours and hours and weeks and days and months later for the second one to come out. It's usually a matter of minutes. Maybe half an hour or maybe 45 minutes. But the elder's not elder by much. So Esau comes out. He's red, he's hairy, he's rough. He's kind of a rough individual. We'll find out a little bit later on in life. His brother takes hold of his heel, puts his hand on his heel. It's almost like the turmoil within the womb is continuing to go on. It's almost like little Jacob is saying, come on back in here. You know? I mean, I can kind of picture that, you know? And so they call him Jacob, and the word Jacob means to be a supplanter or a deceiver. Verse number 27. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field. And Jacob was a plain man, dwelling in tents. So we've got these two personalities, and they're totally opposite of one another. One is a man of the field. He's a hunter. He's a cunning hunter. Cunning here means he's capable. He's very adept at what he does, okay? He has the ability to do his job and do it well. He's a hunter. We see that Jacob is a plain man. The word plain is the Hebrew word tam, T-A-M would be how I would write it. And the word tam is not, it can mean quiet, but if you look over in Job 1:8, it says that Job was a perfect man and an upright man, and that word perfect is the same word tam. So it's not that Jacob was a wimp. Jacob was a fulfilled man. He was a mature man. One's going off, runs out in the field, and he goes hunting, right? The other one stays at home and takes care of business at home. Now, what were these people? They weren't bakers, okay? They weren't automobile workers. They weren't farmers. What were they? They were herdsmen, were they not? Abraham gave all kind of flocks and herds and whatever to Isaac. Isaac was his only son, and he gave the inheritance, and he was a shepherd. So we can understand where a shepherd would be needed by the family. They got all these flocks. Jacob's a shepherd. We read on further on, we find out that he was indeed a shepherd. Our friend Esau was a hunter. Now, let me ask you, how much need would there be for a hunter in the family? You've got thousands, I'm assuming hundreds to thousands of sheep and goats and whatever floating around. You've got meat on the hoof right there. I mean, how hard is it to go outside of the camp, grab one, and cook it? What do you need a hunter for? Remember, the birthright goes to the eldest. Remember, the birthright is not just a double portion of the inheritance. We kind of tend to think that way. It's also who's going to lead the family when Papa passes on. Now, you need somebody to lead the family who's responsible. Somebody who knows the family business. Somebody who will take care of the family. Somebody who's not running around out in the woods and out in the field going hunting with his bow. So when we find out about the selling of the birthright, there's some, God's hand is behind this, okay? Verse 28, Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. We got a problem going on here. Papa loves one child, one son, Mama loves another. So there's a difficulty inside the family. There's disharmony inside this family. The family's a small family as far as Mama, Papa, and two boys, but they're at odds with one another. The babies were at odds with one another inside the womb. They're still at odds with one another outside the womb. Remember, keep in the back of your mind that Rebekah asked God what was going on, and God told her, the elder shall serve the younger. She knew in advance, before they were born, that it would be a reversal of what man would want. Okay? And Esau said to Jacob, verse number 29, and Jacob sod pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. How many of you had sod pottage this past week? What the heck does that mean? Sod pottage means to boil soup. a soup made out of lentils, okay? So I had to look that one up, sod pottage. Elizabeth actually sod pottage this week. She did. She made bean with bacon soup, okay? Bean with ham soup. She sod pottage. And Esau said, verse number 30, and Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, for I am faint. Therefore was his name called Edom. The word Edom means red, okay? So he said, he's hungry. He's been out hunting. He's hungry, and he said, feed. He goes to his brother, and he says, feed me. Is it a brother's place to feed another brother? Think about it. That's not typically how it works. If he's that hungry and he's going to the encampment of where the family lives, wouldn't you think Mama would be a logical place to get food from? What about the servants? I mean, he was the oldest son. Could he have not gone up to a servant and said, hey, sod me some pottage, make me some soup, give me something to eat? But he goes to his brother. I believe he was directed of the Holy Spirit to go to his brother. So let's see what happens. Verse number 30. Yeah, he was a lousy hunter as far as I'm concerned. I mean, you know, he goes out hunting and comes back empty-handed. So, and the other part about that, I thought about this too. I don't know about you, but I've hunted before. I gave it up a number of years ago, but I've hunted before. I was a bow hunter as well. And if you're going to go out hunting, you don't go out without some little snacky in your pocket, okay? Because number one, it gets boring sitting out there waiting for nothing for hours and hours. But number two, you get hungry from exerting energy. So you always take something with you. So if he's a hunter and doesn't take something with him, he's not real good of a hunter. Okay. And Jacob's, verse number 31, Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. Wow, that's a pretty steep price to pay for a bowl of soup, you know? Jacob is, if nothing else, he's not very subtle, okay? He's a sneaky individual. Sell me this day your birthright. And Esau said, behold, I am at the point to die, and what profit shall this birthright do to me? I am at the point to die. I suspect it's an exaggeration. I suggest it's a big exaggeration. I'm starving to death. Big stomach, right? He wasn't starving to death. And like I said, he could have gone to one of the servants. He could have gone to Mama. He could have gone anyplace else and gotten something to eat, and it wouldn't cost him anything, right? He's the eldest son. So, exaggeration. By the way, we all do exaggerations from time to time. Okay, verse number 33. Jacob said, swear to me this day, and he sware unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Jacob says, swear unto me. It's his twin brother, right? Obviously, Jacob had some reason to not trust his brother. Swear an oath to me, which was legally binding. It's not like Brother Ken and I are friends, and he says to me, sell me your car, and I say, okay, here's my car, and I don't have to make you swear an oath. I trust you. He didn't trust his brother. He made him swear an oath, make it legally binding. Okay. Verse number 34. And Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage of lentils, and he did eat and drink and rose up and went his way, and thus Esau despised his birthright. That word despise means to scorn, to belittle, to think little of, to look at in contempt. His birthright, he could care less about. He'd rather eat a pot of beans. I like to think of it as chili, you know? He'd rather sell his right to rule the family, his right to a double portion of the inheritance. Why would he be willing to sell all that for a pot of beans? He didn't think much of it. That's for sure. He despised it. He looked down upon it. You see, I get this picture of him being this carefree hunter, roaming all over the hither land and all over hill and dale and hiding behind trees and whatever. He's an archer, okay? That's what the Bible teaches us. And he's kind of footloose and fancy-free. Jacob, on the other hand, stays at home. And when he stays at home, he's a shepherd. He's carrying on the family's business. Who's more fit to rule the family once Papa dies? Somebody who stays with the family business, who learns the family business, who's responsible, or somebody who's irresponsible, floating around in the woods, not catching anything? So there's method to the madness here. Brother Troy, you had something to say?
No, Brother Hugh.
Sir.
Just my opinion, but it seems to me like that he was a lazy person, and if he ever became the head of the family,
yeah,
when his daddy died, then he'd have a responsibility of taking care of everybody else.
Yes.
So he just wanted to go ahead and get an early start, let his brother start taking care of the things by feeding him.
Yeah.
That's really that. That's just what it seems to me. That's why he didn't care anything about his birthright.
Yeah, he could care. He obviously could care less. He belittled it. It also says, I believe it's in 2 Peter, it says that he was a profane person. He was a wicked person. He was a vile person. He was one who followed after prostitutes. He was one, I mean, he had no responsibility in the family. All he had to do was take care of himself. Yeah, yeah. And actually, if you think about it, you're not too far from wrong. If you think about it, he had already married 2 wives, had he not? And they were of the Hittites. We had read about that previously. Bible says that they were a grief of heart to Rebekah and to Isaac. So, I mean, this guy was on the wrong track. Let me do this. We live on a street that's quite long from the main road, and it goes down to a DNR launch site, or a Corps of Engineers launch site, little park. So it's quite a long little street. And we're over by the bridge at Highway 53, so we're not too far from that area. We were going down the other day, yesterday, and there was this character walking down the road. And I know we're not supposed to judge by sight, but, okay, we were looking at this guy and going, I don't know, I like this character in my neighborhood. I mean, he just looked nasty. He looked like he had no goodwill going on inside his heart. So we kind of take notice of who's in the neighborhood. I don't know about you, but I want to make sure that my house and my family is protected. And so we walked down, we made a comment about it. Now we're at home for a short period of time, and we're coming back down the same road. We're going the reverse of what we had gone before. And when we're coming back, there are not 1, but 3 sheriff's deputies' cars pulling this one walker over and giving him the what for. I don't know what he did, but irresponsible, okay? Not one who I would think I would want to rule my family, to be the head of my family, to be making family decisions. And this is kind of the image that I get of Esau. He's just an irresponsible individual. And like I said, the Bible says he was a profane person. He was a wicked person. Okay, number 26, chapter 26. There was a famine in the land beside the first famine that was in the days of Abraham. And Isaac went to Abimelech, king of the Philistines, unto Gerar. A famine in the land. The famine in the land that they're referring to, that was Abraham's famine, was over 100 years prior to this particular situation. Not likely it's the same Abimelech. Now, Abimelech can sometimes be thought of as a name, but it's usually a title. Abimelech usually means the king or the ruler, whatever. He goes to a place called Gerar, G-E-R-A-R, and Gerar was an outpost for a group of people that were called the Sea Peoples. We know them as the Philistines. So there was an outpost, and they were close to the coast. They came from Crete, and they had this outpost on the mainland, and there was a king there. This Abimelech was there, and he ruled the land that was there. This is not the same Abimelech, likely not the same Abimelech that Abraham dealt with. Just to do a little reverse rewinding of the tape, going back a little earlier, Abraham met an Abimelech. They became friends. They signed a non-aggression pact one with another. That's what we would call it today. And the first Abimelech gave Abraham the right to live wherever he wanted in Philistine territory. You remember the story? So we're going to find out that Abraham made some mistakes. We remember he basically put his wife in danger. We're going to find out that our friend here, Isaac, follows right smack dab in Daddy's footsteps. Does the same thing over again, even though he knew it was not the right thing to do, even though he knew that it was wrong, even though he knew Daddy's story, he does it anyway. Now, what you do as an adult has bearing on what your children are likely to do when they become grown up. Not always true. I've known of good Christian families who raise their children in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, making sure they're in church and whatever, and the kid turns out to be not anything like the parents. I can testify to that. My parents raised me up in a good Christian family, and I turned against everything that I had been taught for a number of years. And I was a heartbreak to both my parents for a number of years. I was the black sheep of the family. So I can understand what's going on here. Abraham did wrong. Isaac follows in his footsteps. He had the example of his daddy. Okay? So let's go on. Verse number 2. And the Lord appeared unto him and said, Go not down into Egypt. Dwell in the land which I shall tell thee of. Sojourn in this land, and I will be with thee and bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries. I will perform the oath which I swear unto Abraham thy father. Don't go down to Egypt. That's where Abraham went before he came back. Don't go down into Egypt. So Isaac at least listens to that. Notice what it says in verse number 2. The Lord, what? Appeared unto him. He saw a theophany. The Lord appeared unto him. He could see. That's what the word appeared means. Don't go down into Egypt. Sojourn in the land that I will, and I will be with thee, and will bless thee. For unto thee and unto thy seed I will give all these countries. God has given us some promises, and we've talked about this for weeks. You as a Christian, I as a Christian, believers in Christ have been given a promise. We've been given a promise that God will protect us, God will provide for us, and God will point out the way. He points out the way. Stay in the land where I tell thee to go. I will be with thee. That's protection. I will provide for thee. Okay? The promise of God is given right here to Isaac, and God's appearing to him, and he's going to pass on the Abrahamic covenant about the seed. Let's see what's going on here. Verse number 4. And I will make thy seed to multiply as the stars of heaven, and I will give unto thy seed all these countries, and in thy seed shall all the nations of the earth be blessed. Thy seed. He's giving it to Abraham, but not just to Abraham. He's given it to Isaac, but not just to Isaac. It's to the descendants that will follow after them. And this promise is still going on today to the Jewish people. There are those that are out there, they're called replacement theologists, and they say, oh, well, God didn't really mean it forever. Well, what has happened is the church has taken over the blessings that were given to the nation of Israel, to the Jewish people. That's not true. God did not abandon them. He may have set them aside for a while, but He has not abandoned them. Read your Bible, and you will find out very clearly that God's going to come back and going to resurrect them as a nation in a day. They will recognize He who they had slain on the cross, and they will come back to Him, and there will be a great revival. Okay. Verse number 5, because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments and my statutes and my laws. God's blessing Isaac for who? For whose sake? For Abraham's sake. Not because Isaac was a great individual, but for Abraham's sake. By the way, Abraham is dead. He's been dead for a period of time, and God's following through on His promises made to a man who's now dead. You see, if God gives you a promise, you can take it to the bank. It will be fulfilled. He doesn't change His promise. His promise is there. His promise to the Jewish people is still there today, even though that they may be in rebellion to Him. I told you when I was growing up, I grew up in a Christian family. We went to church. I mean, the doors were open. We were in church all the time. I was a teenager. I rebelled against that. I didn't like that. I went against it. But God's taken care of my family to ensure that theirs who was departed would one day return. That's what happened in my life. I one day returned. I came back to the Lord because of that woman's salvation right there. See, I was away from the Lord, and we went to church, a little church at the end of our street. I didn't want to go. She wanted to go. She had not been much to church in her lifetime. We went to that church, and the next Monday, day after Sunday, I was away on business. Pastor and his wife came to the house. She got saved. I had a long drive home, thinking all the way, praying all the way, listening to the radio to some good gospel music all the way. From Huntsville, Alabama to Atlanta, Georgia, it takes quite a while by car, and it's this kind of a road. And God brought me back to Him because my wife got saved, and that was the trigger that brought me back. See, God didn't abandon me. He put me on the shelf for a while, but He drew me back again to Him. God has not abandoned Israel. There are those who think so, but they're wrong.
You notice in verse 5, that's the first time the word commandments is plural in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
It's not in there. And it comes down to our Savior.
Yeah. It was for Abraham's sake, and he kept His charge, His commandments, and His statutes, and His laws. That's pretty all-encompassing, is it not? What's the Bible all about? I've been thinking about this for the past week or so. It's kind of been on my mind. If you were to give a book review of the Bible, and you had to do it in one paragraph, and you're doing it, this book review, to people who are not Christians, who are not believers, what would you say? And to my way of thinking, the Bible is all about this. Hear what God has to say. Do what He tells you to do, and it will go well for you. Don't hear what God has to say. Don't do what He tells you to do, and you'll suffer the consequences. I mean, if you look at the whole book, from cover to cover, it's all about hearing what He has to say. That's why we got left this book. It's a pretty thick book. I don't know how many pages, 1,000 some odd pages. Mine is. And God's given us this book so we can use this book and read this book. Unfortunately, a lot of people have the book in their house and it's dusty because they don't look at what's in the book. They don't put it into action. They don't act on the promises of God. I was that way for a number of years. I mean, I think we've all run into situations where we haven't read our Bible, we haven't prayed like we should. Then something comes along in our life, whoa, and I think God has to get our attention. He got my attention a couple of times, pretty clear. And I went through some difficult times, but I found out that it wasn't to punish me, it was to draw me closer to Him. And so when we have trials and difficulties that come in our life, it's easy to say but hard to do. Don't draw away from Him, draw closer to Him. It's to teach us reliance upon Him. I don't know about you, but I get pretty self-sufficient. You know, I can take care of me. Oh yeah? Well, here's a little curveball and see how you handle that. You know, we're all at His mercy, and He loves us. He loves us so much that He died for us. He loves us dearly, and He wants us to love Him. And love is shown by, if you love me, you will keep my commandments. Abraham kept his commandments, and Abraham was given the promise. Okay, where are we at here? And Isaac dwelt in Gerar, number 6. And the men of the place asked him of his wife, and he said, she is my sister, for he feared to say, she is my wife, lest, said he, the men of the place should kill me for Rebekah, because she was fair to look upon. And it came to pass, when he had been there a long time, that Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out at a window and saw, and behold, Isaac was sporting with Rebekah his wife. And Abimelech called Isaac and said, behold, of a surety she is thy wife. And how saidst thou, she is my sister? And Isaac said unto him, because I said, lest I die for her. And Abimelech said, what is this that thou hast done unto us? One of the people might lightly have lain with thy wife, and thou shouldst have brought guiltiness upon us. And Abimelech charged all his people, saying, he that toucheth this man or his wife shall surely be put to death. Then Isaac sowed in the land and received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. He lies. He lies like Abraham lied. Abraham wasn't really a lie. He told a half-truth. A half-truth is a lie, by the way. Isaac tells a bold-faced lie. She is not his sister. She is his second cousin, and that's not the same thing as a sister. And they must have been there for some period of time, and don't you just know that Abimelech just so happened to be walking on top of his roof and just so happened to see into the tent, and just so God was directing this whole thing. I believe it was the Holy Spirit. And he was talking to this man, Abimelech, and he was showing this man, Abimelech, he was doing two things. He was keeping a lost man from further sinning. He was protecting the seed of the woman. You remember way back in Genesis chapter 3? The seed of the woman will be blessed and will go on, and out of that will come Messiah. And he's keeping them from sin. Anybody here been kept from sin? I have thought about this a number of times. God kept me from sinning in this particular way, that particular way, and He's not because I was a good person, because I wasn't a good person, but He protected me and kept me from things. Praise His name. Praise His holy name. What's this thou hast done? Here's a Philistine, and he's basically saying, how can you cause such wonderful people like us to sin? As if they weren't sinners on their own. They show this morality that they don't really have. But I believe God was protecting this whole situation. Let's stop here. Oh, one more thing. Verse number 12. After all this happened, Isaac sowed in the land and received in the same year 100-fold, and the Lord blessed him. Isaac sowed in the land. What does it mean to sow in the land? Throwing out seed, does it not? Was Isaac a farmer? He was a herdsman. Here's a herdsman sowing seed. Huh. Kind of a little out of character. Any idea as to why he might be sowing seed? I'm asking, because I don't know. Yeah?
Reading the history of Israel, when they came back to the country, 48 and all that, they took the Bible and found out what grew where.
Okay.
And they went to that scripture right there. You reached 100-fold. And so then you were so weak.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of looked at that and going, why would a shepherd be putting down grass seed? You know, I don't quite understand that. Let's close in prayer. Russell, would you close us in prayer, sir?